Good afternoon, everybody. How y'all doing? We're at another study by Dr. Jeremiah. We're going to be studying John this time, and we're going to go into the introduction today. Hello, Lisa. Yeah, I hope you're following us too. We're going to be going into the introduction. It's a short read. We will be going into chapters 1 and 2 next week. So let's get going on this. The introduction to the Gospel of John. John, walking up to the Sea of Galilee, saw Simon called Peter and two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother. He called to them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. This is in Matthew 4:18, 21, and 20 through 22. Excuse me. The Gospels say that Jesus called 12 men to be his disciples, but these three were fishermen. Peter, James, and John shared a special relationship with him. They were given unique access to events such as raising Jairus' daughter in Luke 8:49 through 51, the Transfiguration found in Matthew 17:1 through 2, Jesus' agony in the Garden of Gethsemane in Mark 14:32 through 34, and it is due to this special access that John's Gospel includes stories not found in other Gospels, such as Jesus turning water into wine in chapter 2, verse 1 through 12, his encounter with the Samaritan woman, chapter 4, verses 1 through 42, his raising of Lazarus from the dead, chapter 11, verses 1 through 44. John accounts this gives us a unique glimpse from one of Jesus' closest disciples into the life, ministry, and death and resurrection of Christ. Author and date. The author of John only identifies himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved. However, based on the internal evidence within the manuscript, it is likely this disciple was a member of Jesus' inner circle, either Peter, James, or John. Since Peter makes reference to the beloved disciple, see 21:20, and because James was martyred early in the history of the church, the most likely candidate for the authorship falls on John. The early church fathers concurred with this assessment. Clement, who lived AD 35 through 99, wrote, John, perceiving the external facts had been made plain in the gospel, being urged by his friends and inspired by the Spirit, composed a spiritual gospel. Irenaeus, AD 130 to 202, noted John, the disciple of the Lord, did himself publish a gospel. It is likely that John was the last of the four Gospels to be written, sometimes between the AD 80 and 90, from the city of Ephesus in Asia Minor. Background and setting. The witness of the early church was that John was aware of the synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John thus wrote his narrative of Jesus' life to complement these Gospels and to supply additional information to help the readers understand the events depicted in those accounts. It also possible that John had neared the end of his life and felt the need to record his personal recollections of Jesus' life and ministry in order to combat some of the false teaching that were beginning to circulate in the early church. But above all, John's intent was simply to lead people to find salvation in Christ. This is apparent from a statement he makes near the end of his account, which he states, But these words were written that you may believe that Christ is the Christ, the Son of God, and that you believe that you may have life in his name. Chapter 20, verse 31. Key themes. Several key themes are prominent in John's Gospel. The first is that Jesus was divine and existed before the creation of the world. Good afternoon, Miss Teresa. The Gospel begins by stating that in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Chapter 1, verse 1. John also repeatedly used the phrase Son of God or only begotten Son throughout his Gospel. It emphasizes Jesus' divinity and records 7 statements that Jesus began with I am. See chapter 6:35, chapter 8:12, chapter 10:7 through 9, chapter 10:11 through 14, chapter 11:35, chapter 14:6, chapter 15:1 through 5. John's readers would have associated with this identification with God's proclamation to Moses that he is the I am who I am in Exodus 3:14. A second theme is that Jesus came to bring salvation to the world. Early in John's Gospel, he records a conversation that Jesus had with a Pharisee named Nicodemus. At one point in the discussion, Jesus states that God sent him into the world so that whoever believed in him should not perish but have everlasting life. John 3:16. John captures many other instances of Jesus using the word life in his teaching, offering those who believed in him the bread of life, water of life, abundant life, and the way to life. See chapter 6:33, chapter 7:37 through 38, chapter 10:10, and chapter 14:6. The third theme, that is Jesus' demonstration, the arrival of God's kingdom through signs. John constructed his account of Jesus' ministry around 7 key miracles to reveal how Jesus, as the Son of God, had the power to turn water into wine, chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, heal the official's son, chapter 4, 46 through 54, heal a sick man in Bethsaida, chapter 5, 1 through 15, feed more than 5,000 people, chapter 6, 5 through 13, walk on water, chapter 6, 16 through 21, heal a blind man, chapter 9, 1 through 7, and even rise Lazarus from the dead, chapter 11, verses 1 through 44. Jesus used terms like life and death, light and darkness, and love and hate to contrast his life-giving ministry against the works of Satan, who only seeks to kill and destroy. Chapter 10, verse 10. The fourth theme is that Jesus called himself a follower to continue his mission, his followers to continue his mission. John related a story at the end of his gospel in which the resurrected Christ miraculously appeared to his disciples as they were gathered together in a home. Jesus greeted them, showed them his pierced hands and side, and said to them, "As the Father has sent me, I also send you." Chapter 20, verse 21. Jesus commissioned his disciples still applies to his followers today. Just as the Father sent Jesus to share the gospel with the world, so the Father sends us into the world to do the same. Hi, Dorothea. John, the key applications. John reveals how Jesus came to provide living water to quench our deep spiritual thirst for things of God. Chapter 7:38. He shows how Jesus is the bread of life, who satisfies our deep spiritual hunger. Chapter 6, verse 35. And he reveals how Jesus is the only one we can obtain the living water and bread of life, for no one comes to the Father except through him. Chapter 14, 6. And that's the introduction to John. I know it's really quick today, and that's okay. I just wanted to welcome you all. Thank you for coming. I will be beginning chapters 1 and 2 next week if you want to read ahead, and we will get going with that. Thank you again for coming. Thank you, Lisa, Teresa, Doretha. Glad to have you, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week.